Are you ready?
I'm always ready. Are you ready?
Are you ready? Hey guys, it's Peter and John with a new episode of Is It Legit? And today we're going to be talking about money, about cash and inflation versus deflation. Now, for some of you guys, probably don't know what really inflation is. At least for me, I struggled with really understanding the concept of inflation and deflation. All I know is I've been looking at these headlines on the news saying that, oh my gosh, we're printing all this money and then the value of our money is losing, and that instills fear. I don't know about you guys, but that instills fear in me because, anybody who's holding on to any amount of cash, they're like, oh my gosh, the money that I'm holding is literally losing value every day that I hold it, right? So I thought that this was a very pertinent topic, and we're going to talk about where are some suggestions. We're not financial advisors. We wouldn't claim that we are. We are real estate advisors, but it would be nice to have a great idea based off all the research, the obsessive research that at least I've done, really just to manage my own finances about this particular subject to understand where to put our money. We definitely want to try to distill as much information for people. Everybody's busy and people are trying to they're trying to get all the information, but not everybody has the time to do obsessive research like we do, but people should do their own research, right? So anyway, let's talk about inflation versus deflation. People think that it doesn't matter, but it 100% matters, especially if you're trying to make it in America. So let's talk about it. First of all, what is inflation, right? Let me give you a very brief and simple description. Inflation is basically a measure of the rate of rising prices of goods and services in an economy, okay? What causes inflation? Now, there are many causes of inflation. I'm going to be talking about some of the main causes, the 3 to 4 main causes of inflation. So the first one is the cost push inflation, which basically it's increases due to the increases in prices due to the increases in production costs, such as raw materials and wages. If wages go from I don't know what minimum wages used to be, $8 an hour, $7 an hour to $15 an hour here in Seattle, well, then the price of goods will increase because employers are going to have to increase the cost of the service or the good to pay their wages, their employees, right? The second one is the demand pull inflation, which basically can be caused by strong consumer demand for a product or a service. So let's talk about real estate, for example, right? Everybody knows the real estate prices are redonkulous. Everybody knows that, right? And basically, if there's a strong demand for homes and low supply, if you guys don't understand the concept of supply and demand, pause this video, we'll wait, and really research and understand what supply and demand is. It's a very basic concept, but basically, high demand for homes equals lower supply, and that equals higher prices, so our dollar doesn't get us as much as it used to. Plus the prices of ancillary, products such as lumber and steel and nails and things like that also increases. So that's demand pull inflation. Thirdly, it's fiscal policy. So our central banks, federal governments, they're able to manipulate. They use these different levers to basically manipulate our economy and how it does, right? So an expansionary fiscal policy by their governments, what they can basically do is they can increase and decrease the amount of income that businesses and people have, right? By giving us tax breaks or by, printing money into the supply, right, and giving it to us like the stimulus checks and whatnot, right? They could do these different things, increasing and decreasing the federal rates, right? So how expensive is money to borrow, essentially, right? And they could actually pull these different levers. And so if they end up putting more money into our pockets by, like, for example, decreasing the taxes, then we're, as business owners or people, consumers, we're going to go out and go out to restaurants more. We're going to put more money into our businesses, which thus expands the economy, right? So that's the fiscal policy inflation. And then the other lever is actually printing money. So this is the biggest fear. John, tell me, what was the thing that you heard about printing money in the last few years or whatever?
So a fifth of all the money printed in the U.S. has been printed in 2020. So
that's insane.
We're talking trillions of dollars, and we'll talk about what that really means. But yeah, it's a lot of money in just 1 year.
That is insane.
Yeah, we've been printing money since like the 1800s, so it's a lot.
Yeah, well, yeah. After we got off the gold standard, we definitely started printing money. So yeah, we're printing a bunch of money, and that's obviously putting a lot of fear into us because the value of our dollar is decreasing. So, to explain this concept, imagine within our whole economy we have 5 goods, right, or services. Let's just say 5 goods. And then we have in our whole economy $5 to spend. If we print double the money, so now we have from $5 to $10 within our economy, well, then the businesses or the companies will end up increasing the prices of the goods, right? Let's just say they double the prices. So that causes inflation because the prices of goods and services increased, right? And so that's the basic concept of the way we print money and how that causes inflation. Now, right now, our current inflation rates are 1.7%. According to some sources, I don't really know where it's at because I've also read 1.3. I've also read 2.2, right? But let's just say it's 1.7%. Well, the feds want to keep it right around 2% for inflation rates. That's a healthy inflation rate. So what's the worry, right? We're actually kind of below the line that we should be at. Well, we printed a ton of money last year, and why isn't that causing what we call like higher inflation rates? Not hyperinflation, because that would be crazy, but why isn't that causing just a crazy amount of inflation? Well, it's actually because the coronavirus, what ended up happening is even though we printed a bunch of money to basically fund a bunch of companies from failing and fund the people who are not able to make their payments, people aren't spending that money as much as they used to. So the only way the prices of goods and services increase is by us having the demand, right? If we spend money, then the prices of goods and services will increase. Well, businesses were closed, and people, because they were afraid, consumer confidence was low, people weren't spending that money and not circulating it into our economy. Thus, that's why we're not seeing these higher inflation rates. Now, the fear is as we start to spend money, because people are getting vaccinated, businesses are opening up, and people are feeling a little bit more comfortable about the economy, stock markets are still at its high, well, then people will start spending money, thus the inflation rates will start to rise again. And then if that rises again, then the fear is then the feds will start to increase the Fed rates to kind of slow down the economy, because if we have higher inflation rates, that's not good either. So anyway, that all has to do with inflation, and I hope that makes sense. I definitely want to hear more about what in the world, the whole deflation world is, and whether we're going to see it.
So I think the first thing to understand is that inflation and deflation is just is normal, and you're supposed to have a good balance of it for the economy to work properly, because we've had inflation and deflation over and over again in our history, and but technically what deflation really is it's basically a downward spiral of confidence in the economy and a slowing down of activity, which you just talked about. And I think a big thing that you really have to look at is debt. So, we all know that if you have a debt, you have to have a certain amount of income relative to the payments on that debt, to be able to service it or pay the debt, right? If you look at, a common deflationary time would be the Great Depression in the 30s, the Great Recession in 2008 to 2012. And right now what's happening is there is $281 trillion that was accounted for at the end of 2020, so just a few months ago. That was 355% of global GDP, or how much the world basically makes in terms of profit, according to the Institute of International Finance. So that's a lot. I mean, it's 3.5 times the amount of money. If you're making $100,000 a year, then your debt is 350,000, right? So
And we're talking trillions.
trillions, and trillions
crazy.
is a big number. And this is actually 40% higher than the start of the great financial crisis in 2008. So, I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean something's going to happen, but I think the coronavirus has definitely been a deflationary pressure because things have slowed down.
Yes.
And I don't think you can really, I think the big debate isn't whether inflation or deflation is going to happen or happening, but it's really the scale and what will cause that. Because I don't think we saw coronavirus coming before 2019.
No.
There could be other factors. There could be a natural disaster. I mean, I hope not, knock on wood, but we just don't know what could happen. There could be a sun flare from the sun that knocks out all of our electricity.
A meteor,
I don't know, man.
winter storm in Texas, a
Yeah.
war. Who
I know.
knows?
It snowed in Vegas and in Texas. So anyway, so if that does happen, that is a huge part. But then also what could happen is, and I think this is a more realistic scenario, is our debt just gets to a point where you just can't print money to service the debt. Like if you owe me $100, I can't just borrow you more money so that you can pay me back, right?
Right.
At a certain point, this is not going to work. So anyway, something happens, causes pressure.
Deflationary pressure.
Deflationary pressure. And that's basically what happened to Japan in the 1990s, right? So anyway, it's a downward spiral of consumer confidence. It's people who are not able to spend money, so they don't spend money. And then the people who get paid for the services and for the goods don't get paid. And then they got to lay off people, and then, coronavirus, right?
Yeah.
So, and I really hope that we come out of it and, we do well. But if it continues to go down this path or other things happen in the future, like the debt being too crazy and not able to be serviced, or some natural disaster or something happens, Ebola number 2, I have no idea. They're talking about different strains of the coronavirus, right now. Who knows? It will basically cause the prices of goods and real estate
Assets and things of that nature.
to go down because people just can't.
There's not demand for it.
There's no demand for it. It's basically the polar opposite of inflation, right?
No.
And most people don't want to file for bankruptcy or foreclosure, so they'll try to sell things. And then when you try to sell things in a downward spiral, you've heard the term catching a falling knife. Well, you got to price it like way below to even have a buyer that thinks, this is a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
Anyway, and that kind of stabilizes, and hopefully at a certain point, not hopefully, at a certain point it'll stabilize, people will start buying again, and we have inflation.
Yeah.
So that's basically, in a nutshell, what happens.
What deflation?
Yeah.
So then the question, okay, let's just assume inflation, because I feel like we could have more of an inflationary situation than a deflationary situation, just because we are printing quite a lot of dollars, and the economy is coming back, so inflation could people could start spending more money, demand increases, thus prices of goods increase, and we're printing more money, and et cetera, et cetera. So, assuming that situation, I think what people are wondering is, what the heck do I do with my money? Right? People have money right now. They have stimulus checks. Some people, people who have saved some money or sold some assets, they're holding on to quite a lot of liquid cash. And so people are, I guess I'm in the kind of situation where I'm like, what do I do? I can't just hold on to cash because we're losing money at even 1.7%, or what if it goes to 3%, 4%, right? So one of the things I've heard is, if you were to hold $100,000 and in 10 years at a 3% inflationary rate, then that same $100,000 will be $74,000. I mean, that's not a good feeling. We're losing money just by
that's pretty
holding
shocking.
it. Yeah. So where is my money safe? What are your thoughts?
Well, I know as a fact, and this is what I've learned over the years, it's not just one thing. It's a combination of things, right? So I think one of the first things that you should focus on, if we're getting into that, is to have emergency savings.
Yeah.
I really can't stress this enough, where this is a game of psychology, and the psychology of being able to have something that's liquid, key point being available to take out of a jar under your bed, go to the bank and pull it out of an ATM or a high yield savings or whatever. As long as it's available, you should have some money in that. Now the question is, how much do you have?
Right. So just to be clear, so this is like liquid cash, emergency savings.
It has to be something that if you break your leg, if you need to feed yourself a meal, you lose your job, and you got to pay your mortgage or your rent payments. Yeah, you got to have it available to grab almost instantly.
So it can't be like stocks, or it can't be like bonds, it can't be like gold, or it has to be like, I could take this money out of the bank account today.
Yes, it has to be available.
Right away.
Right
Okay.
away.
Okay. Yeah. And I to be honest, I challenge anybody to debate us on this in terms of like where to put your money, at least these basic kind of principles, right? So basically $1,000, and that's just kind of a generic number that comes from Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey is a huge financial guru that I follow, him and Robert Kiyosaki. And $1,000 is just like if you don't have much money, 80% of Americans don't have $1,000, which, here in Washington, it's probably higher because people make a lot more money here. But most people actually don't have $1,000. So the first thing that you should do is $1,000. Personally, for me, and this is what Dave Ramsey endorses, is to have 3 to 6 months of emergency funds within your bank account, because emergencies will happen no matter what. It will happen. Something will happen. If you look at the data, some kind of health thing comes up, your tire pops, something will happen, or you'll lose your job. So you need to make sure you have, I personally believe in at least 6 months of emergency funds. And if you don't have that, well, have a plan for it. Start, working side jobs, start working, it doesn't matter what it'll take, but you should have at least 3 to 6 months of emergency funds. So,
yeah, I would agree. And I think one of the most important habits to get into is, when you have $100 come to your account, whether it be a paycheck or, whatever it might be, you need to have a percent of that. So we do this all the time, where we have to, as realtors and as business owners, we have to set aside our own taxes to a separate account.
yeah.
I know that this $100 isn't really mine, and I thought that was kind of a detriment. It was a bad thing, but it was actually a blessing, because it allows me to say, well, what else do I need to fill up the bucket first? And one of those buckets is definitely emergency savings.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how many accounts do you have?
I probably have like 25 accounts.
Yeah, that's a lot. So you have emergency savings, taxes, and you have all these.
Yeah, so basically I took this concept from Tom Ferry. Tom Ferry is a big real estate guru who helps a lot of real estate agents. But this doesn't just pertain to only real estate agents. It pertains to anybody who wants to grow wealth. I would say most, if not all, wealthy people use this concept, which is, if I get a paycheck, I break it down to various different sections. So emergency funds, and again, I'm not. Once you have 3 to 6 months, I would actually then focus more on investing or paying off debts after
Sure.
that. So
Yeah.
you fill this bucket of 3 to 6 months. So if you look at like a pipe situation, you see those pipes and you see like this one will fill first and then this one will fill. Well, the first one to fill is your emergency funds. And then secondly, it's like for us, we have to save for taxes because we're business owners and we have to pay at the end. And then investment account, real estate investment account for you, your child's your education fund, right? And then savings, just to have, whatever savings that you have. And I can't even remember all of the different accounts that I have, but basically you just want to have those different buckets and you have to plan for it. So,
Yeah.
So let's just say, okay, $1,000 or 3 to 6 months saved into your emergency funds. Secondly, debt.
Yes. So the concept is really simple. The concept is how can you make the best use of every dollar that you make? And unfortunately, if you have high interest rate credit cards, some of those interest rates are like 20 to 25%.
Insane.
Or even more.
That should not be allowed in the United States.
Yes, that's probably another video, but that is where you should pay off that debt first. Emergency savings.
Yes.
And then you have high yield, or I'm not high yield because that's for you, high interest credit cards if you do have them.
Yep.
And again, to bring another real estate example into this, in first-time homebuyer classes, one of the main questions we get is, where do we put, if we have money saved aside, do we put that as a down payment or do we pay off credit cards? Mm-hmm. The answer is almost always credit cards. If I can pay down $300 worth of payments toward credit cards, I can buy myself with the same amount of money that I was paying toward credit card interest, $50,000 more of home or house. And that's a huge number because I can literally take you up into the next tier of homes. And it's the same, you're going to pay $300 anyway, pay it towards your mortgage, right?
Right.
So that would definitely be the second step of paying down your highest interest rate, credit cards, whatever else you have going on.
Yeah, Dave Ramsey says he believes in the debt snowball. So start with the lowest, basically your smallest balance first, and then kind of build, take on the bigger balances from there. But I personally just believe get rid of your credit card debts because that's like just the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
And when I say pay off your debts, I'm not talking about all your debts because mortgages are an exemption. I believe in Robert Kiyosaki in that sense. Although Dave Ramsey says to pay everything in cash, Robert Kiyosaki believes in good, healthy debts, which is, like mortgage debts, right? So just want to clarify.
And what I did was I realized that I have a really, I have a cookie in my hand in the cookie jar mentality. Because every time I look at a credit card, I realize my brain fires differently. Because my credit limit is in the tens of thousands of dollars, right? Like I go buy a car with a credit card, and I was so much more relaxed psychologically when looking at my credit card, and to spend it or to because it's so easy online to just say okay autofill on Amazon,
Yeah, there's no pain receptors.
Exactly, it has to be painful, and I realized I need to cut up my credit cards, Who the heck cares about, I had 100,000 points on my Chase.
Yeah.
That really translates into maybe $600 to $800, maybe $1,000 of savings on your airline ticket, right? But that habit that got me to spend $100,000 on my credit card, that's not worth $1,000. So for me, I cut up my credit cards. I talked my wife into, okay, let's leave the credit cards in this drawer in case we need to make a big purchase. Might as well get the points. But using my debit card, and I have an email with my balance every single morning at like 5 a.m.
Oh, really?
And I wake up with my balance.
Oh.
And it's painful. It's like, wait, why is that like $2,000 less? Oh, I paid my kids' tuition. Yeah, I guess that's okay.
Wow,
So
that's good.
the pain is what made me take control of my credit card debt. And for me, maybe you're more disciplined, but cut up your credit cards, do what you got to do, add some pain. So
I use credit cards. I'm not gonna lie.
yeah,
I have two different credit cards from a personal and business, and I think you can have a credit card because you do have to build credit. You can have a credit card, but you have to prove to yourself that you can handle it. If every single month you have your budget and you're way over your budget every single time, it's clearly not working. Don't do the same thing over and over and over again, or else you're an insane person. So one of the things that we constantly do is we manipulate our environment to manipulate our behavior. So if you
right,
can't,
right, right,
like
right.
I 100% believe in that. I also believe there's a lot of you guys out there who are disciplined enough to have a credit card, but only you can make that determination. You make that determination by auditing your past behavior.
For sure,
So.
for sure.
Okay, and then the really the last things, guys, is for those of you guys who are employees, I would definitely max out your retirement contribution because the government incentivizes you by giving you tax breaks for you to save for your retirement. They also incentivize you for owning real estate or employing people, right, creating jobs. So I would definitely put your money into your retirement funds. And then, kind of like you were saying with the buckets, like people should be investing their money. Once
Yep.
you have the 3 to 6 months or the $1,000, once you've paid off most of your debts, and then once you've put money into your retirement funds, well, I have a little money left. Now, last question is, gosh, what the heck do we do with our cash? Because holding on to cash is not good.
So deflationary investments include the hot topic. I think the two things that many people are talking about are gold / precious metals like silver, copper. We can also talk about cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin,
Huge
Ethereum. I mean,
Yeah.
my stepfather. I mean, we all know what it's at now. I think it's like at 60,000 last time I checked.
Yeah.
My stepfather bought a few in his 70s at like an average price of $4,500 per Bitcoin.
Insane.
And even that isn't even that good. Because when we were getting into cryptocurrencies in 2017, I mean, it's disgusting how much. I mean, what was that, like $100, $300?
Well, Ethereum, but I actually bought Bitcoin at 1900.
Right. But how many did you buy?
Yeah, I bought more as it kept going up, but
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
but it could even go up even further. That's the scary thing.
what, 500,000, $1 million, like they
I
say?
don't know, man.
Yeah,
I'm buying something with that money.
yeah,
But I just, cryptocurrencies, cash is another huge deflationary protection.
yeah.
Cash is king. They
If
say
you
that for a
believe
reason.
it's going to deflate.
I mean, it's always good to have cash, aka the emergency savings.
Yeah,
But I think, see, the thing is, deflation can happen in some parts of even the same country,
yeah,
while other parts are not.
yeah.
So how do you win on both sides? Well, it's really, I mean, the perfect world would be having assets that increase in where it would increase, and then buying things where it doesn't, where it decreases. But
Yeah. So I mean, assuming that we're going to be in kind of inflation, and you believe that there's going to be inflation, hopefully not hyperinflation. Statistically, or if you look at the history, the best assets that performed was real estate, real assets. So that includes real estate, commodities, platinum, real estate, diamonds, gold. I mean, I'm basically going through the list, right, from best performing to least. So I would say, though, out of everything, like if I had, let's just say I filled my 3 to 6 months, I paid off my debt, I put money into retirement funds, and I have some money left over. My gosh, I don't think after everything that I've researched, and I've researched a lot, like obsessively about this topic for the last 3 years, one of the main, I'd say one of the main categories that kept popping up was real estate. Now I'm pretty diversified. I have most asset classes, to bonds, to gold, to cryptocurrencies, even some commodities. I'm actually looking into emerging markets. Those I heard are one of the best protectionary assets to have during a correction and or market depression, whatever you call it. But real estate keeps coming up because it's a real asset. So the government, first of all, the government gives you incentives for you to hold real estate, whether you own it as a primary residence or whether you rent it out. It's like a rental property. Because if it's a rental property, then you get depreciation. If it's a primary residence, if you are itemizing your taxes, then they give you incentives by writing. You could write off property taxes. You could write off the interest rates as well, right? And then also, if we have hyperinflation, right? If or let's just say higher inflation rates, well, the value, the prices of your goods, the assets like real estate will rise significantly. If we have hyperinflations, then a house right now that's worth $1 million is going to be worth $10 million, some crazy number. So I think there's and then also real estate as an asset, as an investment property. Well, that piece of real estate, gold, it just sits there. It doesn't do anything. Warren Buffett hates gold, right? But with real estate, that asset is making you more money. Rent rates won't ever go to like $100, right? It'll probably stay the same or grow. So your money is making you money, and it's just constantly going. If you could leverage your money and get a lot more house, well, that's just gonna thus increase your profits. So it's so hard to deny that real estate is one of the best asset classes. We've done a thing on where housing prices will go. I do believe in the only downside is that if you're living in other states, well, prices will, if you look at the Black Knight charts, it seems like prices will decrease because delinquency rates, right? So the prices of your asset may decrease because of that. But if you were to look at really what protects your money the best, it's really real estate. And I hate saying that because we're in the real estate industry, but do your own research. We feel that real estate is one of the best hedges against inflation. So
and I think just to just finish my thoughts on that is if we just get a lot of people who are the barrier to entry is a hot topic just because things are so expensive. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of ways to mitigate that. I think you can think about house hacking. You can, buy a duplex for 3 to 5% down, and pay off, your mortgage with somebody else's money. Don't buy in Seattle, right? Because it's crazy. You can't evict anybody, but you can have roommates. I know a guy just bought a 4-bedroom house. We're closing on it in the next couple of months. It's a new construction. It's a long closing. And he's going to rent out each room for $1,000, and his mortgage is going to be like negative. Wow. We know another guy who just renovated the downstairs of his, super savvy investor renovated the downstairs of his house, and is going to get a traveling nurse to pay like $2,400 a month. I mean, that's phenomenal, right?
And he's going to stay there. What, like, would you say almost close to basically payment free?
Yeah, because he has another renter living in another unit. And when I hear these stories, it's very encouraging because I think you get beat up in the market a lot. I mean, we make so many offers. We're writing contracts, daily, weekly. But, you talk about house hacking, you talk about creative financing. You could even buy out of state. I mean, you don't have to just buy in Seattle. If you have $10,000, you can go buy somewhere else.
Yeah, like Georgia, you could buy a $50,000 house, like Savannah, somewhere like that.
There's so many places.
10% or 20% down.
So, I mean, real estate, we're investors as well as realtors. And the reason why, I personally continue to invest in real estate is because it's something that gives you a hedge, something that gives you a roof over your head. Yeah. And ultimately, you're going to pay to live somewhere anyway. So it's hard to get around that fact.
Yep.
But do your own research. It's really it's like a rabbit hole because it is an infinite amount of information you can read on this topic. But there are definitely certain very, very clear answers and distinctions that come forth to you as you're going deeper into the topic. Yeah. And then one of them is definitely real estate. So
For sure, for sure. Well, thank you guys for joining us on our Is It Legit podcast, and we'll definitely have more information about more topics in regards to business and health, and we're happy to share with you guys. And if you guys have any questions, please subscribe, comment on our video, and we're happy to discuss any of the topics that you guys bring as well. So thank you guys, and we'll see you on the next video.